you please unmute your mic? Your mic is mute, Dr. Sunil. Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dr. Sunil.
So good to see you all.
Good morning, Dr. Sir.
Good morning. Oh, fortunately, Dr. Sunil Srohi and Dr. Sunil Javla both are Sunil.
He was
Dr. Sirohi, very good morning. This is Dr. Saurabh Gupta. I am campus director.
Oh,
And we are proud, privileged to welcome you.
Thank you.
Dr. Sirohi, am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear.
Welcome, Dr. Sirohi. And it will be a great pleasure to host you. So, hope that the participants will be benefited with your talk.
I hope so. This is what I've done like last 9 years. So, I mean, it's a portion of work that I'm going to be talking. So,
yeah, I think it will be difficult for you to be, it will be early morning for you.
no,
I think it is midnight.
Yeah, it's 11:24 in the night.
Yeah, it is midnight. Yeah.
Oh,
Dr. Sirohi, your voice is not clearly audible, sir. Please.
Let me see if I connect.
If you will use lead, then I think it will be better.
Let me just see.
You can use earphone or other.
Okay, is it better now?
Yeah, it's now it's good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Javla, you were saying something.
yeah, I want to say that Dr. Sirohi, he has done his B Pharm from Basic University in 2003. So he was a great learner at that time. I have seen that he was so simple and he was very hard-working person. And later on, he joined the St. John's University, MS and completed in 2008. Am I right, Dr. Sirohi?
Yes, that's correct. I did that
And
in
after
6
that,
months. Right?
he reached the script. Yeah. Then he has done his PhD also from the same institute in 2010. Then he moved to Florida in 2011. So I think he has in America, he has visited so many places, and also he has studied at so many institutes. Then Washington State University in 2014 completed his postdoc, and also he was a research professor. And later on in 2016, he joined the Xavier University, Louisiana. So we are really glad to join today. I think in this COVID period, there is so much stress on the people. The topic is very much relevant, that how a addictive person can relieve from that addiction of alcohol by targeting the food and mood. So we hope that it will be beneficial, and we as a pharmacist also we can have so much role in the society because our profession is a noble profession. I think participants they join us. Right. So let's wait for 2-3 minutes and then we'll start.
Sure. So is my voice is breaking or is it like okay?
No, it is okay.
Okay.
Dr. Sirohi, your voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking?
No,
Now it is audible.
Dr. Sunil, I think there is some problem from your side because what we have observed that your voice is breaking. Dr. Javla.
Okay, sir. My maybe some internet problem.
Yeah. But Dr. Sunil Roy voice is okay.
Okay. So how is the situation in Panipat there?
In Panipat, if we talk about situation is not very bad, and you can say not in a very good shape even.
Mm-hmm.
But the number of cases are increasing day by day. Not so many cases. But if we talk about the top 10 states of Haryana, top 10 states of India, Haryana is fortunate that there is we could not get in top 10 position as far as the number of corona's cases are concerned.
Yeah, we got a really hard hit.
I in Gurugram and Faridabad, the number of cases are more.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of a metropolitan city more. So more people are connected, so you know.
Yeah, in Delhi there is a lot of cases are there, nearly 50,000. So these two districts are adjacent to the in that to the cases are less. Geeta, madam.
Very good morning, sir.
Please see that the participants they are joining,
Sir,
they are sending the request.
I can see yes, many of the participants are there. Few of them are in the waiting room. I'm just letting them in.
Yeah, we will start within 2-3 minutes.
Yes, sir, we can start in another 2 minutes. So can we start?
Madam, please wait for 1-2 minutes. The people they are waiting and they are all joining.
Sure.
Dr. Sirohi?
Yes.
How is condition in Louisiana?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a little better than other states. It was crazy earlier, but right now it is a little better than other states like Florida, California, and Texas. They're getting really hard hits right now. The cases are really kind of increasing drastically. So I mean, we are staying inside from last 4 weeks. So that's the best thing you can do right now. But so hopefully we should have some vaccine. But you know, we are hearing some bad news that vaccines probably are not that effective. I mean, they are effective for a few months and that's it. But who knows what will happen? Maybe sometime in December or so, we would know more about it.
Yeah, I think it will take some time for the vaccine development. A
Yeah,
lot of research is going on.
a lot, right now. Trump says that he has ready millions of doses at this moment, ready to go, but we don't have data supporting that, like whether that is safe or not. So as soon as he have more data, he says that he's ready to ship it out. So
Deepika, madam,
Yes, sir.
please start.
Okay, sir.
Please start that participant.
So, very good morning to one and all here. And for Dr. Sunil Sirohi, sir, it's not the morning, it's the midnight over there. But anyhow, respected Vice Chairman, sir, Geeta Group of Institutions, Mr. Ankush Bansal, Worthy Director, Geeta Group of Institutions, Dr. Saurabh Gupta, Principal, Geeta Institute of Pharmacy, Dr. Sunil Javala, and then we have Dean of R&D Department, Dr. Amit Gupta. We have with us Dr. Sunil Sirohi, a very special guest from America and our speaker for today. Colleagues and my dear participants, I welcome you all at this webinar, a webinar on breaking the vicious cycle of alcoholism by targeting the mood and food. Talking about alcoholism, it's a chronic disease which takes a heavy toll on an individual's physical and mental health. It's popular all over the world and there is no dearth of reasons to drink. While celebrations happen to be the biggest reason for alcohol's popularity, many also consume it as a means to relieve various challenges in life: stress, financial problem, peer pressure, health issues, so many things. Alcoholism can have devastating effects on one's mental and physical health. Without breaking this vicious cycle, the consequences can be destructive. Nevertheless, there are ways that you can break out of your cycle of the stress or alcoholism. And our speaker today will be talking about breaking this vicious cycle of alcoholism. The webinar has been organized and brought to you by Geeta Institute of Pharmacy, flourishing under Geeta Group of Institutions, Panipat. Geeta Group of Institutions is the prestigious education place in North India and is the most preferred education institute in the region. It has the biggest engineering campus, the best law college in Haryana and Delhi NCR area, number one ranked hotel management college. We have Geeta Institute of Pharmacy with us, and we have hotel management colleges. I thank management of Geeta Group of Institutions, Panipat, to organize this webinar, and it will be highly beneficial for the participants. So today I have a pleasant duty of introducing our guest from America and speaker for today, Dr. Sunil Sirohi, who is having a very rich experience of more than 15 years in the field of alcoholism and addiction neurosciences. Dr. Sunil Sirohi is currently working as an assistant professor of pharmacology at Xavier University of Louisiana, LA. He has a broad background in pharmacology and neuroscience. He has his postdoctoral training in the Laboratory of Alcoholism and Addiction, his profession also include professional memberships that includes Research Society of Alcoholism, American Association of Colleges of Pharmacy, American Psychological Society. He has also done with many of the noble causes related to alcoholism and addictions. Sir, we are honored and grateful to have you here today with us. Now, I would like to request Dr. Sunil Javala, sir, Principal of Geeta Institute of Pharmacy, to have a welcome address. Sir, can we have you?
Very good morning to all the participants and Vice Chairman, Sri Ankush Bansal, and all the participants. Today we are organizing this webinar with Dr. Sunil Sirohi. He is one of the great research scientists in the field of pharmacy. He brings vast exposure to the pharmacy field. A lot of research in the pharmacology field. And of his journey, he had started his journey of the pharmacy in 1999 from Guj Embassy University, Hisar, Haryana. On he did St. John's University, New York in 2008. In 2010, he completed his PhD from the St. John's University, New York. Then he moved to Florida. From the Scripps Research Institute, he completed his work in 2011 by specialization in molecular pharmacology. Later on, he moved to the Washington State University. He completed his postdoc in neuropharmacology in 2014. Later on, he joined there as an assistant professor. In 2016, he joined the University of Pharmacy, Louisiana, and did his work there as a research professor. He has done a lot of work in the field of pharmacology and also in the alcoholic field, how alcohol can, how an alcoholic person can move out of this addiction. He has done a lot of research in neuropharmacology field. So today I welcome him at the Geeta Institute of Pharmacy platform so that all the participants get benefit him. Welcome at this platform. And I welcome all the directors, sir, at Geeta Group of Institutes, Saurabh Gupta ji, and all the faculty members who are connected with the group and doing hard work for the growth of the group. So I once again welcome all the participants. Dr. Sirohi, please continue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Javla and Deepika, for a nice introduction, a kind introduction. It's so good to see you all, and I hope everyone is staying safe in this challenging time. I really cannot believe how time really flies. You know, it's just, it has been like almost 15 years since I started my journey here in the United States of America. And I'll be presenting a portion of work that I did in the last 9 years or so. It started basically in Washington State University, and then kind of a portion of work that I'm doing right now. So you probably have seen this flyer. It basically nicely highlights the major components of the talk today. It's called alcoholism, mood, and food. So these are three different things that we're going to talk about today. And what's the link between those? But before we jump into the link between those things, I would like to really introduce you these terms. You know, some people might be familiar with some terms, but some might be using different terms. So when we talk about alcoholism, some people probably know alcohol abuse, alcohol dependence, or some use alcohol use disorder. So these are based on different diagnostic and statistical manual of mental disorders. You know, this is the book that doctors use basically to treat or diagnose patients in the clinical field based on what kind of symptoms they show. So it's one and the same thing. You know, earlier they were these terms were individually described like drug abuse, alcohol abuse, or alcohol dependence. But now this all things are clubbed under an umbrella term called alcohol use disorder. And basically, what that means is that that there's a cluster of symptoms that the patient exhibit, like tolerance. Tolerance is basically you take something, the effect basically goes away. You take more, so you need to take more to stay the same effect. Physical dependence is basically, if you stop taking a drug, you see physical withdrawal symptoms. Psychological dependence is basically the term that probably you all familiar with is called addiction. So the psychological dependence is more synonymous with addiction, which is characterized by compulsive use or compulsive drinking in this case. So what is compulsive? Basically, patients continue to take this, irrespective of the negative consequences. Loss of control, so they just start drinking and they just lost control. They just keep on drinking. What is negative effect? Basically, it's feeling of, or you can say negative emotional state. They are in perpetual state of affect, they feel depressed, anxiety, and all those emotional states are really disturbed. Other terms that you probably are familiar with, the binge drinking. The binge drinking is when we say that for women it's 4 drinks and for men it's 5 drinks when they do this in relatively very short period of time, like 2 hours. And as you can imagine, that a drink is a very subjective field, subjective criteria for somebody who you can see in the picture. So we need to define a drink. So what is a drink? It's 14 grams of alcohol, at least in the United States. It depends on where you go in different part of the world. It might be different. In India, I don't think so. Really, there is exactly that much in terms of quantifying in grams. But all they say is that 1 drink is about 1 beer. So 1 beer here on this picture you're looking at here, this beer is 5% alcohol. That is considered 1 drink. And as you talked about more concentrated liquor, like whiskey, gin, rum, they have higher concentration of alcohol, but then in terms of volume it is lower. So this is considered 1 drink. So what we call is heavy drinking. Once a person who does this binge drinking for 5 or more times in a particular week. So this is a brief introduction about what is alcoholism, what is alcohol dependence, so what is binge drinking, what is heavy drinking, and how do we define drink. A little bit about alcohol consumption or alcohol intake in the world, basically. So on this chart you're looking at this is taken from World Health Organization. It's the very latest one that is there on their website. And on this one, you're looking at the alcohol consumption per capita, pure alcohol in 15 plus year in terms of age. So you can see that, that in European countries, there's very heavy consumption. Middle Eastern, there is very least one. And if you look at the US and India, it's kind of one scale of the shade. You see that this color is India, this is basically US. Not that much different, but you can see that they're kind of similar. And it was quite surprising to see the heavy drinking episodes. So this is the prevalence of heavy drinking episode among current drinkers. So what is the meaning of that? The people who are drinking right now, like the current drinker, what % of those people engage in heavy episodes of drinking? So if you look at US and this is India, this is the US, you can see the exactly same color. And this was very surprising to me. I did not know this. Before when I pulled up these graphs, because when I came from India in 2005, all I knew that when I researched all those things here, alcohol consumption in India is way lower than other countries, especially in US and European countries. Then I pulled in this graph. This basically kind of explained what happened. This is you're looking at 5-year change in the alcohol consumption per capita, and they're looking at 2006 to 10. Alcohol consumption in India is drastically increased, whereas in US it kind of remains stable. So that explained me, that makes sense, that alcohol consumption in India is increased. And irrespective of these graphs, if you don't even bother about these graphs, you probably have experienced this firsthand, right now, in this situation. This is basically, these are some pictures that I pulled from online newspapers. And the bottom picture, this is in front of a liquor store in Mayur Vihar in Delhi. So this is second day, I think, so after they lifted the ban, and still 70% tax on alcohol, but still people line up there for this alcohol. And it's one you can argue that, oh my God, this is basically driving the economy. But I pulled another article that's from a very recent publication from India. What they are saying is that, irrespective of how much revenue you get from alcohol, it is still a big toll on the society. It is a very huge burden on society. And the picture is not that different in the United States. People couldn't get alcohol in shows, so what they did online. So in alcohol, in the US, basically, there was jump of 243% jump of alcohol drinking online sales. And the same thing with in terms of economic burden. That much we spend to treat alcohol use disorder, and then again, globally it claims around 3.3 million people yearly. So this is basically telling you, hopefully I have convinced you enough that this is a big problem. This is a huge problem. And in today's talk, I'm going to be talking about that they could be a situation, there could be two effective ways to treat alcohol intake or alcoholism, basically. So today I'm going to be talking about mood, how you can target mood, and food to really address the situation. Why it is so important? Because none of the FDA-approved drugs they target these states. Like for example, it's not that we don't have drugs for the treatment of alcoholism. We have like naltrexone, we have disulfiram, we have camprosate, but still there is huge 60 to 80% chance of relapse. So we need a better therapeutics to treat alcoholism. So this approach is novel because none of the FDA-approved drugs really target these states, and that could be substantially contributing to this chronic relapsing disorder. So before we again go into the link between these things, let me just briefly tell you what the alcoholism cycle looks like. What is really alcohol dependence? So this is how it starts. It starts with where normal and social drinking happens. People start, they party around with friends, or social gathering. It starts with a very few drink, and then for some people, it doesn't happen to all, but for some people, it turns into really problematic and escalated drinking. And that turns into, for chronic exposure, it turns into alcohol dependence. And then if they want to stay away from alcohol, they have to abstain. And then basically recovery is possible. But what happens basically 60% chance that the people relapse. It's a huge problem. In this talk, or the portion of the work that I'm going to show you, I'm asking this question whether emotional or nutrition status could be a way to deal with situations. So that's what our goal is, or my data that I'm going to show you today. So what happens basically from when somebody drinks alcohol for the first time versus when they drink as an alcoholic or alcohol dependent or alcohol addict, there's a change in the reason that you drink alcohol. So initially somebody could be drinking alcohol because of positive reinforcement. Later in the life, or once they are alcohol addicts or alcohol dependents, they're drinking alcohol because of negative reinforcement. Let me just tell you, this is a complicated term, but let me just tell you a very simple example. With a simple example, let's take an example of two brothers, Ram and Sham. They're driving a motorbike. So Ram is wearing a helmet because he thinks that this is going to be safe for him. It's really important for a person who drives bike to wear that. It's for own safety and health. So he feels good about doing whatever he's doing. Okay, so that's positive reinforcement. How about negative reinforcement? Now let's talk about the brother, Ram's brother Sham. He doesn't care about wearing a helmet, but now when he sees cops around the corner, he immediately wears the helmet. So that's a negative reinforcement because you're doing something because you want to avoid something bad. So so they're both doing the same thing, but now the motivations are different. So initial stages of alcohol drinking is because somebody who drinks alcohol, they feel good, they feel they're aha. But now, following prolonged exposure, what they do, they drink alcohol because they want to avoid feeling crap. And in order to, again, explain you in terms of alcoholism or alcohol feel, here you can see that this is the mood. This is a normal state, like you're feeling great, normal day situation. Somebody who take this for the first time, this is alcohol and they feel good. So this is a moment, aha. And then immediately after that, there's a state called oh. So you can imagine this with the next day hangover effect, So this is important because that's how your normal homeostatic systems are maintained. A positive effect is contracted by a homeostatic force in this opposite direction. But what happens in dependent state when somebody has been drinking alcohol for a very long period of time? What happens is that they drink alcohol, they don't feel that good anymore, right? But remember, the tolerance is happening. But in addition to that, this state, which is a negative emotional state, it kind of grows, intensifies. So now people basically are feeling crap. And then eventually, down the road, through multiple cycles of alcoholism, this state is, if this was the normal state or normal mood state or homeostatic point, now the homeostatic point is no longer there. There's a different set. They are in a perpetual state of feeling sad, feeling depressed. And what they know? That, if you're sad, all they know is that when they drink alcohol, they feel good, okay? So now what they do? They just go back to drinking alcohol. That's what's called as self-medication hypothesis. people who drink alcohol and they get into this trap. Basically, eventually they want to stay away from alcohol, but they feel very, very bad or very depressed. And then all they know is that, oh, when I drink alcohol, I feel good, and they just go on again. So this cycle, this vicious cycle, never breaks. So there are multiple researchers. They have looked into different neurotransmitter systems into brain, basically, which are basically impacted by this situation. One of the systems that I worked in my PhD was opioid receptor system. So this opioid receptor system is composed of two things. I'm sure that you're familiar with drugs or medicine that you take. Most of the drugs, they target some protein in the body. Sometimes it is called as receptor or enzyme or whatever. So in this situation, you have endogenous ligands that are targeting to this receptor. So we have a component called opioid peptides, opioid receptors. So we have three opioid peptides: enkephalin, dynorphin, and endorphins, and then we have receptors: dynorphin, delta opioid receptor, kappa opioid receptor, and mu opioid receptors. But why do we care about these? I mean, why do we care about opioid receptor system in alcoholism? So it turned out to be that, so this is the rat brain, and I'm showing you different parts of the brain. Don't worry, I mean, similar systems are there in the human brains too. So this is the VTA, which is called ventral tegmental area, amygdala, nucleus accumbens, fertile cortex. So these brain areas, what are these? You see that this mesolimbic dopamine system, I'm sure that you have heard about dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical in the brain that is basically linked with pleasure. So alcohol interact with this circuitry, and then you see that all these opioid peptides or opioid receptor system, they are heavily concentrated in these areas. So it's kind of a logical thinking that if somebody is drinking alcohol for a long period of time, for multiple cycles, there would be some perturbation in this opioid system too. So in fact, it has been shown that following acute alcohol exposure, it releases endorphins and enkephalin. And then after that, after some period of time, it releases dynorphin. So if you think about the involvement of the receptor system in terms of emotional status, mu and delta, they are linked with euphoria. I mean, especially mu is linked with euphoria. Have you heard of, I mean, probably you have heard about morphine and all these drugs of abuse. They target these receptors, and that causes euphoria. And then kappa is linked with dysphoria. The kappa, if you inject kappa in kappa agonist in rat, it's going to produce dysphoria, right? So if we plug those receptor system in our situation in which aha or ooh, so mu is linked with aha, ooh is linked with kappa, okay? So that's a non-dependent situation. So when somebody is just drinking once or twice, but somebody who is drinking for a long period of time or chronically, you can think about, okay, if this goes down, what do you presume? What do you expect? Mu should go down too. And in fact, there was some paper or some studies in the literature shown decreased mu receptor signaling in alcohol-dependent states. But what we did not know was what happens to kappa receptor, okay? And based on this hypothesis, what we predict is that the kappa receptor system is going to be intensified, should be too much here. So the first evidence of a disturbed or dysregulated kappa receptor system in alcoholism that came in 2007 from this Walker and Koob. So he was a PI there in the lab, and he's currently an IEEE director. So they showed first time is that when you train rat on this paradigm, so this is a operant chamber, if you heard about this. So operant chamber is that the rats, basically they press this lever. You see these two levers. So these levers, they press it and they get alcohol. You see this rat is drinking alcohol right now. So once they press the lever, they get alcohol. So they learn this and then they keep doing it until they acquire stable baseline. So what they did was they put this rat, so they trained the animals. They put half of the rat in this chamber called intermittent alcohol vapor chamber, and half of the rat, they were just on the air. They didn't get alcohol exposure. So this is a apparatus to expose the animals on alcohol vapor. So this is the chamber, this is alcohol bottle, this is pump, this is air. So the alcohol vapor is mixed in the air, and the animal basically they get passive exposure to the alcohol vapor. And this, what they do basically, they do it 14 hours a day, and then 10 hours they don't get alcohol. And then they stay there in this chamber for almost like 4 or 5 weeks. And then after that, what they do, they go back to the same testing station, like in which they press lever and they get alcohol. So here in this graph, you're looking at on y-axis, this is alcohol drinking or alcohol reinforcement. So you can see that this dark bars, these are ethanol exposed animal, means they are alcohol dependent animal. And these are air exposed animal, means they went to the air exposure during the same time. So you can see that animals who went through this vapor exposure, alcohol vapor exposure, they become dependent. What is the meaning of dependent? They're drinking more alcohol now. So they are alcohol dependent. So here's the key. If you inject, so what they did was they injected, they implanted some cannula in the brain, in the skull basically, to infuse a ligand directly in the brain. And what was that ligand? That was norBNI. So norBNI is what? It is a drug that blocks kappa receptors. Okay, so this is a kappa antagonist. So you can see that this norBNI dose dependently decreased alcohol drinking only in dependent animals. It didn't touch anything in air exposed animals. So this was very, 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 very interesting, and it got huge excitement of that. You know, the kappa receptor is somehow dysregulated in alcohol dependence, and actually, if you block it, that could be therapeutically beneficial. But what we did not know based on this is that how this is working, right? You know, they just infuse the drug in the brain of the animals. Well, you know, these kappa receptors are all over the brain. You know, for example, this is the same circuitry I showed you earlier. It's a different version of that I published in this Frontiers Molecular Neuroscience paper. So this is VTA, amygdala, nucleus accumbens, CFC, same brain regions. So you see that it gets dopamine inputs from VTA. All these brain regions, they get inputs from VTA. And you know, kappa receptors are here, kappa receptors are here, kappa receptors are here. And these different brain regions, they are implicated in different effects. For example, amygdala is somehow implicated in emotional regulation or emotional distress. Nucleus accumbens is more where pleasure is seeks. For example, all the drugs of abuse, they release dopamine in nucleus accumbens. TFC is more involved in decision making or cognitive control of addictive behavior. So these reasons are different. They do different things, but kappa receptor can modulate neurotransmission in different brain regions. So although they showed that kappa receptor antagonism reduces alcohol drinking, but what we did not know is how it is happening. So what I did basically, I focused on amygdala first. So we use the same paradigm that you use, and then so we have an operant chamber. They train the animals in this alcohol drinking. We put the animals in the same vapor chamber, and then we basically establish the same thing. See that before going. So this dotted line is this basically. So this is before dotted line, before vapor chamber. This is after. So see that these groups of animals, they were drinking almost same alcohol before this treatment. As soon as we put the animals in the vapor chamber, these guys, they become dependent. They drink crazy amounts of alcohol. So this is the emergence of negative emotional alcohol dependent state. So after that, we did a lot of stuff like behavioral testing, brain extraction. We did immunohistochemistry, molecular signaling, and pharmacology. And this was published in Biological Psychiatry back in 2014. So first, I'm going to show you that the dynorphin-like immunoreactivity in the amygdala. Okay, what is dynorphin? Remember, I told you that this is an endogenous ligand for kappa receptors. So we did that. So we did immunohistochemistry, and look at this is air exposed, this is vapor exposed. Okay, so we're looking at the amygdala. This is central nucleus of amygdala. You see that? And this is the blown up images here. So you see that this vapor exposed guys, they got more strain. I mean, I know, it's probably a little hard to see that, but we quantify that by both area and particle count. You see that vapor exposed guys, they have heightened dynorphin-like immunoreactivity. So this tells you that, okay, endogenous ligand is somehow increased too. So then we did, okay, what happens to receptor then, kappa receptor? So I use this assay called GTP gamma coupling assay. So as we all know that I told you that the opioid receptors are G protein coupled receptor. What is G protein coupled receptor? So these receptors, they talk or the signal via these G proteins. So these are G proteins, so since they are linked with GDP. So this is an inactive state of receptor, but once the receptor is activated by this ligand, this alpha, beta, gamma, they separate, and then look at this GDP right now. This GDP is exchanged with GTP. So now basically now we know this phenomenon occurs. What we do basically, we supply an external GTP, radio labeled GTP. So now this radio labeled GTP accumulates over the period of time, which is the meaning of that: more radioactivity, more receptor activity. Okay, this is how you read this essay. Again, look at the data. So this is on y-axis, you're looking at receptor activity. On x-axis, we are looking at endogenous ligand. So this is what we use for the for stimulating the receptor. Remember this, you need this to see this effect. So as you can again see that vapor exposed animals, they have heightened the receptor activity or kappa receptor activity. So this is just like wonderful. Now, based on this, what I've shown you, kappa receptor ligand and receptor is heightened in alcohol dependent state. Well, what is the meaning of that? Remember, I told you amygdala is implicated in emotional control or emotional center of the brain, right? So if kappa receptor produce dysphoria and amygdala, in amygdala, they both are upregulated, do you see a negative emotional state? Well, in order to figure that out, we use this process or this method called 22 kilohertz ultrasonic vocalization. What is that? So let's say if you're near to your friend, you know, if they're sad, you can definitely look at their face. You know, oh my God, you're sad. But how do you look into that? I mean, they all look same. How do you know the rat is sad? Or can you ask rat how you're sad? Or so yes, there's a way to ask the rat whether the rat is sad. So this method is basically how they really communicate in nature. When they are sad, they emit 22 kilohertz ultrasonic vocalization. So we said that. So this is the way we do it basically. So we administer air puff in the nape of the neck, and then this is the air puff right there, and then we record. Okay. We cannot hear that, but what we did basically, we converted this ultrasonic sound into audible sound, and this really is very, very sad. Let me just show you. So can you hear that? Nope. I don't know if you guys were able to hear that or not.
Dr. Sirohi, voice is not audible of this video.
Oh my God. Okay. So
Please replay it again.
Can you hear now? You can note if you can hear that or not, right? Okay.
okay, so you see that this is very sad, right? And this is what rats are doing, right? Can you hear me now? I just changed the audio settings. No, yes, no. You can thumbs up. Okay, good. Okay. So if you look at, if you measure this 22 kilohertz ultrasonic vocalization in these animals, which are air exposed or vapor exposed, these guys who are vapor exposed means these are dependent animals. Well, they emit more of these 22 kilohertz ultrasonic vocalization. What is the meaning of that? Well, they are really sad. They're really bad. So based on this, somebody showed in the same lab that if you block, if you infuse this norbinide in these rats, it can dose dependently block this 22 kilohertz vocalization. Saying again, the kappa receptors are implicated in negative emotional state. Okay, so what is the confirmation of that? What I showed you is that alcohol dependence causes upregulation of kappa adenorphin system, and this causes heightened negative emotional state, and then that could be causing escalated alcohol drinking. So how do you test this? That you block the system, it should decrease alcohol consumption, okay? So this is what you're gonna see. So again, this is alcohol consumption. This is on y-axis alcohol drinking, and on x-axis different conditions. So you see that baseline, these two groups, they're drinking almost same amount of alcohol. Following again vapor exposure. These guys who are vapor exposed, they drink alcohol more. Is saying that they are alcohol dependent now. And once you infuse this sham or ACSF, what is ACSF? remember, whenever you do pharmacology controls, they get the exactly same thing, but the drug. So whatever you dissolve the drug in. So ACSF is what we dissolve this drug in. So we infused ACSF, it did not do anything, but when you infuse Norbinol, it selectively decreased dependent alcohol drinking, which is again saying is that, okay, this is the kappa receptor mediated event. So I showed you that the kappa dynorphin system is upregulated, and that's what the name got for this paper, 1-2 punch of alcoholism. So remember, this is the first part of the talk that we're targeting the mood, and we were asking this question: what is the emotional status, or what is the role of emotional status in this relapse-like drinking behavior or escalated drinking behavior? Where I told you that upregulated dynorphin kappa receptor system in the brain circuitry causes dysregulated emotional states, and if you block this, you can facilitate the pathway to recovery. So that is the first part of the talk. Then I got excited about this question, which is very, it was very interesting to me at that time. Still it is, that how many cheeseburger people eat and how this impacts alcohol consumption. So what I mean by cheeseburger is 300 calories. What I mean, why do we care about calories in drugs of abuse? Well, if you look at alcohol is the only drug of abuse that gives you calories, and it is more than your proteins and carbohydrates. So see that, and just to give you more appreciation of alcohol beverages and a McDonald's cheeseburger, one beer is half of the cheeseburger, one vodka shot is 1/3 of the cheeseburger, and one martini is one cheeseburger. So you had a crazy martini, you just ate one cheeseburger, okay? So that's calories. So based on this, you can imagine that people who drink alcohol with normal meal and everything, it could be adding to the total calorie intake, right? And it could be contributing to the obesity epidemic that we're facing right now. But there was no report. There was nobody knew that how binge-like eating impacts alcohol drinking. Okay, so this is what I want you to know. So we set up this experiment. So she was basically a technician in the lab, wonderful technician. So she really helped in getting this data together. So we designed this experiment to ask this question: that how binge-like intake of these palatable diets would impact alcohol drinking. Okay, before I go, I mean, we're getting some questions in the chat or what, I don't know. Please, I get very excited when I talk about what I do, okay? So please stop me, okay? If there's a question doesn't make sense, please stop me, okay? Okay, so this is basically the design, basically. So we have chow. Chow is a normal food that animals get in the laboratory. And then we have a palatable diet called NPD. It's a nutritionally complete palatable diet, which is a little higher in fat, 40% higher in fat. And then we have this control group, chow. And then another set of animals, they got this palatable diet 2 hours every third day or 2 hours every day. Another experimental group, it got diet for 24 hours for twice a week. Again, it's a complicated design. Don't worry about it. For ease, this is how you should look at it. So there are 4 groups right here: chow, which is a control, NPD 1, 2, 3, and with increased number, there's more exposure. So this is how I love pharmacology. This is exposure dependent or dose dependent effect. Okay, so this is the dose dependent effect. Okay, to ask this dose dependent effect. So these animals, they got these respective diets, and after 6 weeks, we did a bunch of testing. Okay, so let me just show you first food intake data. So again, we have these all groups: NPD 1, 2, 3, chow, and this is what on y-axis we're looking at food intake in kcal, and this is the average of 6 weeks daily food intake. So this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So the red dots, I have kept all the colors same throughout the presentation, so that will help you to really navigate all the figures in the same time. So the red dots are chow. So you see that all these animals in the chow group, they're eating almost the same amount of food all the time, all the days of the week. But animals who got palatable diet 2 hours, 3 days, the third day, it's basically they go crazy on that day, and next day they underconsume. Second day they almost eat the same amount of diet, but then when they got the diet, they are crazy. So, and then this cycle continues. Same with NPD 3. So remember, these guys, they got 24-hour access, okay? So they are eating more than these guys. So again, the same pattern, they eat crazy amount of food on that day and they undereat, but they again go crazy amount of food, they undereat, and then this cycle continues. And then we have this NPD2, which they got every day, 2 hour every day. I mean, in 24-hour food intake, it looks like they ate almost same as chow, but actually it's higher than that. You know, why? It's a complicated way of designing this. Like, so you see that these guys are eating, undereating, and they're eating, undereating. Whereas these guys, they get every day, so they undereat, overeat same day. So that's the reason the average is almost same. So that's the reason this is the way. But bottom line is that you should look at NPD 1 to 3 in a way that these are diet dependent, exposure dependent groups. So now we trained the animal, or we gave the animals these diets for 6 weeks. So that's food intake data. Let me show you alcohol intake data. So we do alcohol drinking these animals in a 2-bottle choice paradigm. So they get water bottle, alcohol bottle in their cages, and they drink it basically. So this is on the left side, I'm going to show you 2 hours, guys. And then here I'm going to show you 24 hours. So 2 hours, guys, you see that red dot, the chow guys? Initially, they didn't drink that much because it's just like 2-hour access. But with the period of time, they learned this and they acquired drinking behavior. They drink too much compared to what they're drinking before. But this NPD 1 and 2, they are drinking less alcohol. And same is true for the guys who got 24 access. They are drinking less alcohol too, which is very surprising to me because I thought they're going to go crazy in alcohol, but that's what they did. And just to make sure, the reason the way we designed the experiment, that really is going to tell you that this is not a fluke, because see that there's an exposure dependent effect, which is the meaning of that. The diet is causing this reduction. More exposure, more reduction. So it's not a fluke. It's just basically a real effect. So one way to figure this out is going to be, hey, you know what? Maybe since we are doing alcohol testing, so remember this is the testing way. So they get diet on Tuesday and Thursday, and we are testing alcohol drinking Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So maybe they just ate too much of the high-fat diet, and now they just don't want to do anything this one with it. They just want to do anything. Okay. So how do you figure that out? That's not the case. So we looked at their alcohol drinking at multiple hours. So this is alcohol drinking, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, and then the rest of the time. So see this NPD3 guy. For the first 4 hours, they are drinking exactly same alcohol as a chow, normal guy. But it is after 8 hours, they are drinking less. So what is the meaning of that? It is something like that. Okay, I'm gonna drink alcohol, but that's enough. So what is the meaning of that? They get satiation, they get a ceiling effect earlier than the chow guys. Which kind of tells you that this is not like the rats were feeling terrible or bad, but I mean, as a researcher, you want to test multiple ways the same question, so that to make sure that that's true. So other way of testing that this is not a generalized hedonic deficit or a motivational deficient is that you give rats sugar. Rats love sugar. If they don't drink sugar, it means something is wrong with those guys. So we gave them sugar to drink, and see, the sugar drinking is not different between groups at all. So they all drink sugar. Saying what is the meaning of that? That there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a selective effect on alcohol. So what we know about palatable food is that short-term exposure to alcohol has been shown to produce anxiolytic effect. What is anxiolytic effect? Decrease in anxiety-like state. In order to assess that, whether that's the case, we use this paradigm called light and dark box. So this is a box which one side is dark and one side is light, basically. So if you put an animal in this one, the animal is going to spend more time, 70% time on the dark side, and then 20, 30% time in the light side. So if you put an animal here, it spends more time here, means the diet or drug has produced anxiolytic effect. In fact, that's what happened. So when you tested these animals, whatever the low exposure or high exposure, there was exposure-dependent increase in the time spent in the light side. So they spend more time in here, which is the meaning of saying is that the diet produce anxiolytic effect. So if you think about all these things together, I initially thought the diet is going to produce anxiogenic effect, and they're going to drink more alcohol. Okay, but here what the data is showing is the diet produce anxiolytic effect, and the alcohol drinking is reduced. it's kind of same thing in the same direction. So that kind of helped me, okay, that's a real thing. And then we published that in these two papers. So what's the conclusion of these two studies was that once you have this alteration between the voluntary calorie restriction and overconsumption, that will decrease the alcohol consumption without impacting the motivation. So that was what we know. Okay, so what is the meaning of this data? So what exactly it is telling you? So remember I told you when people drink alcohol along with the meal or the food, they're typically consuming 10 to 15% of calories from alcohol, okay? But once a person is alcohol dependent or alcohol addict, they are consuming 60 to 80% calories from food. And what is the meaning of that? Alcohol gives you calories too. So what is going to happen eventually? Chronic alcohol consumption can decrease nutrient intake, and that you'd probably see in alcohol addicts. So they all care about alcohol, they don't care about food. So the overall nutrient intake is going to be decreased. Even if they eat a nutritious meal, the malabsorption of the nutrients from the GI tract is going to hamper the nutrition status. And also there are some reports that say that there is increase in nutrient degradation following chronic treatment with alcohol or alcohol exposure. So all these things together, they can dysregulate neuroendocrine peptide system. I'm sure that you've heard about ghrelin, leptin, insulin, all these peptides. They are involved in maintaining the energy homeostasis. For example, whenever somebody eats a carbohydrate-rich diet, or food, basically, insulin gets in, and that helps to get glucose out of the body. So all these feeding peptides, they are implicated in energy homeostasis. That's what we know. That's what we knew earlier. But now what we know is that not only they talk to the feeding circuitry in the brain, they also talk to emotional circuitry. Remember I told you the VTA, accumbens, amygdala, PFC. So these neuroendocrine peptides, they also go and talk to the same circuitry. And eventually, following chronic exposure, they can cause neuroadaptation in the brain emotional circuitry. And then that can cause increase in negative emotional state. Remember my first part of the talk that I showed you the alcohol can itself cause increase in emotional status, negative emotional status. So these guys, the impaired neuroendocrine system that can chip in the same circuitry or same system basically to cause escalated emotional or negative emotional state, and this contribute to this never-ending cycle. So based on this, we formulated this hypothesis that a compromised nutritional status may further exacerbate various behavioral impairments observed in alcoholics, and that thereby it should be substantially contributing to this chronic relapsing disorder. But before I go into to real world, I thought maybe there's a way that I can ask the same question based on the data I already have. So remember I showed you some animals which went through vapor chamber to make them alcohol dependent. I looked at their body weight. So these are the data from those animals. So this is the baseline. Remember, this is before they went to this vapor chamber. So their body weight was exactly the same. But once they get out of the vapor chamber, animals who became dependent or vapor exposed animals, their body weight was lower. Aha, that was first evidence. This is wonderful. That is in the same direction that I'm thinking. Then there was a report that I saw that the people who stayed sober longer, they chose sugar added beverages. That's very weird, but this is very interesting. Another report which was recently came in that patients who remained abstinent, they consumed more chocolate than non-abstainer. Wow, this is the whole. Then after looking at all these things, then everything made sense to me. How? That now I'm telling you that the palatable diet reduces alcohol drinking. Okay. Following chronic alcoholic exposure, I know I showed you that there is nutrition deficiency. So, and then people who are really dependent and they want to abstain from alcohol, they choose this high calorie palatable food. So maybe there's a way that you give those people this high calorie palatable food that will actually help them to stay sober longer. So based on this, we framed our hypothesis. Another hypothesis is that if you improve the nutritional status in abstinence, that may not only compensate for general malnutrition, but it could also ameliorate the adverse effects of alcohol withdrawal and that can help to manage the state of alcoholism. But all we knew was that there's some sort of intermittent, nutritionally complete palatable meal or diet that does not impact body weight, but induces an anxiolytic effect and decreases alcohol drinking. That's all we knew, because based on these, that's all we knew. What we did not know, if we really want to use this paradigm in the clinic, there's so many questions before we even think about it. So, for example, what is the minimum effective duration? Remember, I told you that we did this with this intermittent exposure for 6 weeks. Why 6 weeks? Maybe 2 weeks, 1 week, and nobody knew that. Okay. Then we have we did not know that we're using this diet which is high in calorie or palatability, whether this calorie is reduced using alcohol or the palatability of the diet is reducing alcohol. What we did not know also is that whether that will change or decrease heavy alcohol drinking. What we also did not know is that whether that will change or decrease alcohol dependence induced escalated alcohol drinking. So these are several questions that we need to answer before we use this paradigm in the real world. So in order to address the first question, whether what's the minimum effective duration and what's the mechanism of these of this intermittent exposure palatable diet-induced reduction in alcohol drinking, we designed this experiment, which is published last year. So again, we use the same paradigm, chow, intermittent high-fat diet. So this is, they got the palatable diets in 2 days and a week. And then what we did, basically, we either did not expose the animals to this diet, or we exposed them for 1 week, or we exposed them to 2 weeks. And after this, we did this alcohol testing, or we looked at their plasma feeding peptides, we looked at their PCR array in the brain for multiple brain regions. So this was done by this Nisha and Star Lavasso. She was a technician. She was an undergrad researcher in our lab, just graduated. So I'm not going to show you feeding data because I already showed you that there's nothing different there. But here, what I'm going to show is how alcohol drinking is impacted by that. So on this panel, what you're looking at when we did not give them pre-exposure to this diet. So look at this red is chow doing his intermittent high-fat diet. So see that the alcohol drinking did not change when we did not expose them to diet. Okay, but when we give them 1 week exposure, alcohol drinking decreased, but it was not significant. But with 2 weeks exposure, alcohol drinking significantly decreased. And again, this is an exposure-dependent effect. Thing is just not a fluke. It's just that way. So what do you get out of this particular experiment is that first, you need a pre-exposure. Without pre-exposure, you're not going to see alcohol reduction in alcohol drinking. Second is that 2 weeks pre-exposure is critical to see significant reduction in alcohol drinking. So that's what we get. So this is very interesting, but then we don't know how this is happening. What's the mechanism? First thing you would want to look at is that feeding peptides that I just talked about, like insulin, ghrelin, leptin, all these things, right? So we collected their plasma, and then we looked at plasma ghrelin, plasma leptin, plasma insulin, and they were not different. They were all same between these two groups, whether they got palatable diet or chow, which was very surprising to me, but that's what it is. So that's what the data is. What these data are telling you that whatever is happening as a result of chronic, as a result of these palatable diet exposure, it is not happening as a result of peripheral system getting involved. The peripheral systems are not implicated in these effects. So the next thing was look at the brain, right? So we removed the brain from these rats, and then we looked at hypothalamus, amygdala, striatum, and VTA, the same brain regions. And what we looked at central neurotransmission. So we looked at 84 neurotransmitters, receptors, gene expression in these areas. And we used a technique called PCR array, okay? So this is hypothalamus, this is amygdala, striatum, and VTA. And the way you look at this graph is, it's very simple. This middle line, you see this middle line? This is means there's no change, okay? So the top dotted line is twofold increase, and bottom dotted line is twofold decrease in receptor expression. So, so you can see that in hypothalamus, in amygdala, there's no change, statistical significant change. But in striatum and VTA, there is huge number of huge changes. I would say more selective changes. And this is just plotting the selective changes in striatum and VTA. So you see that there are a lot more changes in the brain reward circuitry than the reasons which are involved in energy homeostasis or emotional control. Okay. That tells this basically nicely aligns with the data that I showed you with feeding peptide, So if the feeding peptides are not changing, that also aligns with nice data that hypothalamic neurotransmission receptors are not changing. So we published that recently in last year. So collectively, what these data were suggesting is that this intermittent palatable diet cycling was critical to reduce alcohol drinking. And also the reason that reduction in alcohol we see following this paradigm is not because of energy homeostasis, but also something more than that, or probably happening at a brain reward circuit. So that answers some questions. So then we asked this question was that, okay, so all these effects that we show earlier, these are all high fat dependent, like we use a high fat diet. Is it just a high fat diet? What would happen if we use high sugar diet, right? That's the first question, is it nutrient specific effect? Again, these diets are high calorie diet. They are also palatable. So what is it palatability that is causing reduction in alcohol? Or it's a high calorie food that is causing reduction in alcohol? And then what is the meaning of that? What is the functional significance of that? Well, that's cool that these paradigms are reducing alcohol drinking, but what is the meaning in the real world situation? So we designed this study, which just got out like last few weeks ago. Let me just show you these data. So the first question that we answered was, or asked is basically whether it is a macronutrient specific effect. So for that, we use a high sugar diet. So remember, all the earlier data that I showed you, that was with high fat diet, right? So this is the high sugar diet. And then we also use saccharin. What is saccharin? It's a known calorie sweetener. Means this is going to provide palatability, but no calorie. So these are the food intake data. First, I'm going to show you. So this is food intake. This is different days. And you see that we use the same paradigm, 2 days a week paradigm. So again, red dots are chow. So they are eating almost same throughout the week. And then if you see the saccharin guys, they're eating almost same thing, all the same amount of calories from food. But these high sugar diet, they are showing the same effect. They're over consuming on the days they get diet, and then they are under consuming when they are on normal food or normal chow. But this is just the overall average of the same data, saying the same thing, that saccharin guys, they're eating same amount of food as chow, and high sugar diet doing the same thing as a high fat diet. Here are the alcohol drinking data. So on the panel A, you're looking at, again, y-axis is alcohol drinking. These are different days. So you can see that this is the chow guys, red dot. They're drinking consistently, and then their drinking goes higher and higher. But these guys, saccharin guys or high sugar diet, you see that there is significant reduction in alcohol drinking with the period of time, with increasing the time. So remember, the reason we chose these two diets was high sugar diet is a high in sugar. It's 50% high in sugar. So if I see reduction in alcohol drinking following high sugar diet, what is the meaning of that? That whatever effect we saw earlier, it is not a macronutrient specific effect. Both high fat and high sugar diet, they're going to reduce alcohol drinking. And now, saccharin also reduces alcohol drinking. What is the meaning of that? This is so wonderful, which is telling you that the reduction in alcohol drinking is not dependent on calorie of the food. It was more palatability of the food that was causing reduction in alcohol drinking. This is just the weekly averages. The weekly is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, first week. This is second week. This is third week. So as you can see that by third week, both groups of animals, they were substantially drinking less amount of alcohol. So that is telling you that it's not macronutrient specific, and also palatability is causing reduction in alcohol drinking. So the final question I have right now is on this presentation is basically, what is the meaning of that? Can we use that in real world? Or how do you use in real world? So we use this model called relapse-like alcohol drinking model. So this is called, you probably have heard about this, that if somebody is drinking alcohol for a long period of time, and then they don't get exposure to alcohol for let's say some time basically, and then they get another chance to drink alcohol, they're going to go crazy in alcohol. That is basically called alcohol deprivation effect. What is the meaning of that? The increase in alcohol drinking from baseline compared to baseline once interruption in alcohol drinking happens. That's alcohol deprivation effect, or relapse-like alcohol drinking. So we used the same model and we tested that whether these diets or different intermittent palatable diets would reduce alcohol drinking in this similar model or not. So we trained a group of rats, and then what we did, they drank alcohol, 20% alcohol for a few weeks. And then we divided them in three groups, which is basically chow, high fat, high sugar diet guys. And then what we did, we stopped their alcohol drinking. And then we gave them 2 weeks of intermittent palatable diet exposure. And then we again gave them alcohol drinking. So see that exactly same thing. They were drinking alcohol, we stopped their alcohol, and then we gave them alcohol. So what we were expecting, they will drink more alcohol. And that's what happened in chow guys. You see that this is a chow guys. They significantly increased their alcohol drinking, and that's called alcohol deprivation effect. But look at high fat diet and high sugar diet guys. They are drinking alcohol less, way less with this period of time. So this is the percent decrease, same data, but just percent change. And that this is the overall change. What these data are telling you is that the intermittent access to these palatable diet was somehow protective in reducing, protective in terms of protecting from the alcohol deprivation effect or relapse-like alcohol drinking. So this is the first time ever anybody has shown this, that a palatable diet would be protective in terms of relapse-like alcohol drinking in animal models. So overall summary, what I showed you today was alcohol intake, what is the relationship between mood and food. And what I showed you that if you block kappa receptor system, it can since this is upregulated in alcohol dependence, if you block the system in the reward circuitry, it will ameliorate negative emotional state. And intermittent palatable diet exposure, it does not impact body weight or fat, but induces anxiolytic effect, probably by interacting with brain reward circuitry and thereby reducing alcohol drinking. So as I promised you, this we're going to talk about, and we'll show you some data in this direction. So I showed you that. Again, I always ask this question when I do research, or I ask my students to ask the same question. Just ask us, what is the meaning of that? Whatever you do, what's the meaning of that? So remember I showed you this picture earlier. This is non-dependent state, and this is alcohol-dependent state. And in alcohol-dependent state, when people are perpetually feeling sad, depressed all the time, and all they know is that, okay, I'm feeling sad. All they know is that when I drink alcohol, I'll feel better. So they go back to drinking alcohol. Based on this, what I showed you, there could be effective ways of targeting this state, which is called a negative emotional state. And if you block this negative emotional state, somehow it will help them to stay sober, and that will facilitate their pathway to recovery. So with that, I would like to thank really all my students who really did this work, and technicians really who helped them, and Washington State University Department of Integrative Physiology and Neuroscience. That's where this stuff really started. In this, John Davis, he was my previous supervisor, a very helpful guy, very friendly guy. He really helped me to set up all these models. And then Ariel was, as I told you, is technician. Joe was undergrad. Angela was grad student. Xavier University, I joined in 2016. Again, I got help from the technicians, Nisha and Krishna, and then these are undergrad students here. And definitely a lot of thanks to the money that I get basically from these grants. So I got this funding from Alcohol ADRP from Washington State University. I got initially internal grants in the Xavier. Then I got this NIH grant that I'm working right now. And also my collaborators, they basically helped me to establish my lab by providing different strains of rats and several consultations. As you can imagine, that once you start a new lab, you need a lot of information. So that's all. Thank you. I would be happy to take any questions. If you want to unmute yourself, that probably would.
Thank you, sir, for gracing your important work and sharing with us your findings. And yes, definitely we have some queries. I would request the participants, if they have any queries, they can drop in the chat box also.
Yeah,
Any
Dr.
questions? I don't see any questions here. Okay. How to reduce alcoholism in case of, I don't know if should I answer the question straight from the chat or how are you guys going to do?
Yeah, Dr. Shirohi, 2, 3 questions are there.
I can't hear.
So
Doc-
I'll bring them up to you, sir.
yeah, please, Deepika.
Dr. Sunil Sirohi,
Yeah.
we have a query that at which limit the increasing alcoholism reduces our body weight. Is there any certain type of limitation?
Okay. Can you repeat the question? Your voice is breaking. Maybe, let me, okay, just give me a second. I changed some settings, so that's probably, okay. Now this is better. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, the query has come up at which limit the increasing alcoholism reduces our body weight. Is there any certain type of limitation?
Yeah, this is a good question. Remember, I showed you this on the first few. Uh, okay, okay. Remember, I told you that binge drinking, 4 or 5 drinking. So based on, again, there's no level that is safe for alcohol drinking. Based on the latest data, that even small amount of alcohol can cause different problems. But for male and female, there are different levels, like binge drinking. If somebody's drinking that level, that is not going to cause huge problems. Remember that I told you 5 drinks for men, 4 drinks for women in a week or so. That's not going to be super harmful. Any
Fine.
other questions?
Yes, sir. One more query we have with us is can alcoholism cause diabetes?
Alcoholism cause diabetes? Yes, so alcoholism is a huge problem. Remember, the way people do this is basically they consume a huge amount of calories from this, and then it can impact liver. Liver is the major organ that is impacted by uh, chronic alcoholism. So yes, all the systems are messed up in all the metabolic systems are messed up following chronic alcohol exposure. Some studies they might say that it's kind of health initially, some few not like crazy drinking, but few drinks here and there. But that's it's not super convincing data.
Well, thank you so very much, sir. The presentation was really very good, and the feedback could be seen in the chat box also. And if I talk about alcoholism, if it's so bad for one, why don't one just stop? To break the grip that alcohol has on one's life, one will have to interrupt the cycle of this addiction. Yes, we definitely have a path to recovery. With this, I would like to request our director, sir, Dr. Saurabh Gupta, to say a few words. Sir, can we have you?
Yes, Deepika, thank you very much. It's pleasure our Vice Chairman, Shri Ankush Manchal is with us. And Dr. Surohi, it was really a nice talk, and the topic, whatever was given, it was based on the call, and this was fantastic. And the presentation and whatever matter you have discussed in a very good manner. And the most important thing, what I want to say, that if we talk about the alcohol had proved its role even in this case, in this time of COVID-19, and it's
Yeah.
shown its importance even. And Doctor, being because you are related to pharmacy, and such an importance of this particular subject, as you have shown that alcohol, no doubt, if we talk about a developed country like US, where you are sitting, we see in a different aspect when we talk about India. If we talk about alcohol,
True.
specifically in rural areas.
Yeah.
So, Doctor, thank you very much. It was really a nice presentation. And whatever we were expecting, and that you deliver more than that. And
It was a pleasure.
so nice of you. And Doctor, please visit us whenever you visit in India. In future,
Sure. Yeah.
you please visit us, and it will be pleasure for us. And because what we tried in this particular institute, we basically a group of institutions, we are running 14, 15 institutions, starting from schools, then UG courses, PG courses, then diplomas in various fields, including our, we got, if we talk about the various fields, we include pharmacy as well, and hotel management as well, law as well. We are in education even. And it is all the vision of our worthy chairman, sir, who is basically, he was a teacher. And his prospects and his vision is altogether different if we talk about all other stakeholders. So when we talk about the Geeta Group has its own identification, its own recognition in the northern India. It is one of the leading educational group, and we are not running it from business point of view. If you asked something, what extra or what different things we are doing a lot of things for our students. Our main focus is not only money making, that is to give maximum what we can do for our students, whether in terms of teaching learning process, or if we talk about in research and development, if we talk about our tie-ups with different institutions, if we talk like Cisco, TCS, IBM, like so many types with we do have. And being a new baby pharmacy, we are trying to nurture it in a very good manner, because this is the second year of our pharmacy institute. And we expect the people like you will be associated with us in future even. So it will be a great help from you type of people. So, Dr. Saab, it was really a pleasure of rather talking to you and rather listening you. And I hope that all the participants of this particular webinar, they are highly benefited. So, Dr. Saab, from behalf of our Geeta family, I extend a very thankful note to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. And I hope so that, really gain something. As I told you, I get excited when I talk about what I do. I hope so that, it made sense.
Sure.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That was all, and I would extend my thanks, my hearty vote of thanks and deep sense of appreciation to our guest and speaker for today, Dr. Sunil Sirohi, sir. I extend my vote of thanks to everyone who participated in this webinar. Thanks all for your participation. Stay safe, stay home. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sirohi, once again. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Have a good day. And stay safe.
Say thank you very much. Same.
Have a great future ahead. Good night.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, doctor. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Yeah. Best wishes.
Oh, you too. Thanks.